Alright everybody, welcome to the video edition of the Bidline Bulletin. In this edition we're going to be talking about bidding for training in NavBlue. So a couple of things off the bat. You're going to obviously check your name and seniority number over here. Coming down, whether or not you're eligible or not. And this is more eligibility for the current bid, not necessarily the training bid. In order to be eligible for the training bid, you're going to want to come over to your training requirements. That's what's going to be important. And whether or not you're showing early, which you would be able to possibly avoid involuntary training, or where you're a must-go in your due month or a must-go in your grace light month. We don't have separate settings here at Spirit for different must-goes, so you're a must-go whether or not you're in your due month or your grace light month. Alright, second, coming down to the bids page button here. I'm going to select that, and you'll notice you have three different tabs up here. Every time you hit the submit button in NavBlue, it tries to submit all three tabs. So this is a very common question that we get almost every single month, that I have tried to submit my training bid and I can't submit it because I get an error. So again, you can only submit the current bid tab when the current bid is open. So for us right now, that is the 7th of the month through the 12th of the month. The default and the training bid are both basically the same. In fact, that they are always in there and you can always submit them and work on them anytime. So real quick, before we work on anything else, we already have some bids in here for different events. I'm going to go ahead and show you. I'm going to hit submit on this bid and we're going to get the message. With this message, the most important thing is right here on the bottom. The training bid submitted successfully. That means you're good. You have submitted the training bid. The bid period close up here, this is the message that we get every single month. This bid period close on the current bid, that only means the current bid when you're bidding your normal pairings for the normal bid month. So that this right here, this current bid, means this current bid tab up here. It doesn't have anything to do with the training bid. So if you submitted a bid and you got this message for training, right here again, remember the training bid submitted successfully. That's the main thing that you need to know. Okay, now that we've beaten that dead horse, we're going to move on. I'm going to hit OK here. We'll kind of skip back to the training pairings themselves. So we're going to click on the training pairings themselves. As we can see, we're due for ground, maneuvers validation, LOE, and EET in this particular round. So we have a multitude of different events. In order to select a particular event, all we would need to do is enable the add bids mode up here. Click this. And then you can either award them or avoid them. Now, if we want to award a particular event, let's say we like this TG005, we can open this. Now we can see that this particular event starts on the 2nd. Now, with this event starting on the 2nd, what this means is the very first day of training starts on the 2nd. So if you train in base, right now, say a Fort Lauderdale, a Dallas, or a Las Vegas pilot. If you train in base, this 2nd of the month pertains to this ground date right here. So the ground would be the 2nd, maneuvers val 3rd, LOE 4th, EET 5th. Now, this would also correspond to using an event start. So if you were bidding for an event start on the 2nd, that's what you would use. Now let's say you travel for training. Basically the other bases currently until the Orlando sims are open. So if you're going to have to deadhead to training, we know we're going to have to go in the day before. So that's a training pattern if you have to travel for training. So if you want to bid for a pattern to start, you would actually need to go back to the 1st of the month right here, because that's when the training pattern would start. Again, the event starts the 2nd, the pattern is the day before, and you would file that down here. And the potential time of this event right here would be day -1, which means 1 day behind the 2nd. And then we use day 5 if you're deadheading at the end of the pairing. So you would, if you were traveling for training, you would go day -1 here on Monday, train 2, 3, 4, 5 here, so 4 days. So the actual 5th day of what we call day 5 here would actually be, it looks like this Saturday here, would be your deadhead back to base. So that's basically the difference between a pattern event or an event start when you're using these for bidding. If you're out of base, you can still use event start. Just make sure you know that you're selecting the current date. So let's say we do want to select this event. We like this event for whatever reason. We already enabled add bids mode up here. That would do disable it if we clicked it again. We would select the checkbox for this particular pairing here, and then we would hit award pairing. Once we do that, it comes up here, TG005 added to the training bid. We say OK. Now to verify that, we would go back to the bids tab, and we would see that we awarded identifier TG005. Now again, if we want to just check and make sure we got the correct one, we can hit the analyzer button here. And we see that the analyzer button, the pairing started on the 2nd for the training, and we can re-verify that we picked the correct event. Again, I've got this a little bit out of order here, so I would actually want to select this line for avoiding November 25 and 26 and move that to the top for the way I want to select this. If we want to check any of these other pairings, TG036, okay, we see that one here. We can open this up and we can view what the particular pairings are from here. We can see there's an odd time in this one. I believe that's a clerical error that's going to get fixed here. But moving on, basically we can see in the order this works. Now this particular bid, we don't normally have to waive to 1 or waive 1 and 7 or anything in a training bid, but we will go ahead and talk about it while it's in here. The reason why you would maybe want to waive minimum days off to 1 in this particular case would be if we open up this pairing that I believe this one started on the 2nd. Let's say that for some reason you really want this pairing that started on the 2nd, and then you had a carry-in trip, or maybe not a carry-in trip, but a trip that ended on the last day of this previous month here. We'll call it since we're in November, October 31st. So let's say you had a pairing that ended that day. If you only had 1 day off here, but you wanted to be awarded this training pairing, you would need to waive your minimum days off to 1 in order for that to work. Now, just because you waive your minimum days off to 1 in your training bid doesn't have anything to do with when you're bidding for your normal pairings for the normal bid month. So it's something to keep in mind. And it wouldn't matter also as far as vacation's concerned. This would be basically for the transition between month to month. It would be the only other time that you would need to worry about waiving minimum days off to 1 that I can think of right now in a training bid. So other than that, there's other things you can do. We added any event that touches November 25 and 26. In a training bid, you can also just do things like prefer off. Let's say we want to prefer off days of the week list, and we wanted to prefer off, let's just say Sundays. So we hit apply, reset all, close. So we could prefer off any event that touches the 25th or 26th, and we could prefer off Sunday. Anything from here, you can also add and change. You just got to remember some of these training events, they are 5 days long. So unless they start, on a Monday or a Tuesday, there's a good chance it could touch any Sunday. So it may be better to just avoid a particular set of days off, not necessarily maybe every Sunday. It's a little easier if you are not traveling to base. Moving on from there, we can avoid particular training. So if we want to avoid a type of training, we can do that. In this case, it's going to be hard to avoid the ground, MVT, and LOE. I'm going to throw this in here just for a different example. This is the event that we're due for, so we really can't necessarily avoid this because we are a must-go. And that brings us to another point, which is this avoid voluntary training line. Let's just say, for example, if we went back to our info page and we were due a must go for this particular event, but we were early for, let's just say, it might be a little confusing, but we were early for ground, MBT, and LOE. From here, what we could do is bid all the events that we want for the event that we are a must go for. Let's say these are all events up here that we are must go for. Now, in order to use avoid voluntary training, typically that event that you're avoiding with avoid voluntary training, you have to be early for. So what you would want to do is bid all of your must go events all up here, and then you would use the avoid voluntary training line, and then below that you would bid for any events that, it would make more sense actually if I moved one of these events down here. So any event that's below the avoid voluntary training line, you could try to avoid those if you're early. Now, if you're early, there's no guarantee that avoid voluntary training will work. Sometimes we do have to take pilots into early training based on different, the amount of sims that are in the base. Sometimes they need more pilots to train in that particular month. It just depends. So using avoid voluntary training is definitely not a guarantee that you won't have to go to training early, but it is a bid option that you can use. All right. As far as everything else, the other things that you can do that some people will put in there is they'll just award any type of event. You can also do an award, ground, MV, LOE, EET. And this would be basically telling the system, if you use this type of line right here, that if you're looking at this bid, you would say, we're waiving days off to 1, also waiving 1 and 7. You're preferring off any event that touches those days. You're preferring off every Sunday. Other than that, if you just read it from there down, you would basically be saying, as long as I get these dates off and these Sundays off, I don't care. Just give me any event that is the ground, MVT, LOE, EET. Obviously, in this particular case, you would want the particular events that you probably picked first, but the way this would read is this would remove any events that touch these days. So if we use the analyzer on this particular line of the bid, it should eventually filter out any days. Like, as you can see down the analyzer, these days are in orange where these days are green. So this green day technically doesn't touch any Sunday, but if you were traveling for training, you would have to be careful because this Monday would get a day tagged on before it. So that's something to be careful about. Now down here, this event definitely touches a Sunday because it starts on Friday and it's at least a minimum of 4 days long. So that's why these are in orange, and if you hover over it, it says it's preferred by preference 5, but it's filtered away by preference 4. So those events would technically be avoided in the first run of the system. Other than that, that is the main thing. Again, remember that when you hit that submit button, it does submit all 3 tabs, and you get that error because the current bid can only be submitted while the current bid is open, and that's the current bid when we're talking about bidding normal PBS pairings to go fly, not to go for training. Last but not least, the results section after you do get an award are going to show your results just like you normally would in PBS on any pairings that you got. Those are broken down just as they are in a normal PBS award. That's about it for this particular session. Appreciate you guys watching, and have a good one.